In Kito's absence, the household felt emptier. Mwamba and Maisha tried to console Jabari, encouraging him to find his own path. But Jabari's spirit was in turmoil. Each night he replayed memories of childhood laughter, of adventures by the river, only to feel the sting of betrayal at being left behind. When the sky thundered with approaching storms, Jabari ventured out to the fields alone, letting the raindrops wash over his face in the hope that they might cleanse his inner turmoil. One stormy evening, while huddled under a leaning mango tree, he was approached by a traveling healer named Obesai. With keen eyes and an aura of quiet wisdom, Obesai sensed Jabari's anguish. He told the young man stories of siblings who had lost their way, urging that forgiveness was the only true remedy for the scars of the heart. His words lingered, yet Jabari's resentment was not so easily dismissed. The air crackled with unshed tears and unanswered questions, leaving Jabari more conflicted than before. Meanwhile, many leagues away, Kito immersed himself in training with the leopard warriors. Days were spent learning stealth, marksmanship, and respect for the wilderness. At night, the warriors would sit around a circle of flaming torches, where an elder named Nima recited ancient proverbs. She spoke of brotherhood as a sacred bond that transcended blood, requiring humility and understanding to remain strong. Kito listened, recalling Jabari's downcast eyes the day he left. The memory unsettled him. He wondered if he had been too proud, if his display of heroics had cast too large a shadow. Yet each time a twinge of guilt pressed into his chest, he buried it beneath the rigors of his training. He chose to believe that Jabari would one day find his own greatness. Still, at the edges of his thoughts, that shadow of doubt would not dissipate. A sense of unfinished business hovered, hinting that despite his new achievements, something essential remained broken. As the seasons shifted, a calamitous drought descended upon the land. Rivers shrunk to mere trickles, and the once fertile fields cracked under the relentless sun. Livestock grew thin, and the villagers scoured the riverbeds in search of water. Far from home, Kito heard rumors of this hardship. Troubled, he resolved to return after completing his final trials with the leopard warriors. By then, Kito believed he would have gained enough skill to help his people survive. News of the drought reached Jabari as well, who was still in the village. When he saw the parched earth and the desolation in every corner, he yearned for his brother's presence. Yet pride kept him silent. Amid the dire conditions, the villagers looked to Mwamba for leadership. But even a seasoned hunter could do little against the wrath of nature. The question loomed, would the two brothers find a way to reconcile before the drought consumed all hope? One afternoon, Jabari was out foraging for medicinal plants in the withering forest when he heard a faint cry. Venturing deeper among the drooping trees, he discovered a lost child, dehydrated and frightened. Acting quickly, Jabari offered a small canteen of water, gathered the child in his arms, and carried him to the village. The rescue stirred admiration among the villagers, who realized that Jabari possessed a quiet courage they had overlooked. Mwamba embraced his younger son, tears filling his eyes. Perhaps, he thought, this was the moment Jabari had been waiting for, a chance to emerge from Kito's shadow. Yet in Jabari's mind, the rescue only sharpened his longing for his brother's presence. If Kito were here, he would be proud, Jabari mused. The dryness of the land mirrored the dryness in Jabari's heart, which still thirsted for reconciliation. But all he felt was uncertainty, a nagging fear that Kito's return would open old wounds rather than heal them. Miles away, Kito triumphed in his final leopard warrior trial by outsmarting a rogue leopard that had been terrorizing neighboring farms. His skill in tracking and archery earned him the respect of his peers. As he stood victorious, breath heaving, something within him yearned for home. The elder sensed his turmoil. It was Nima who finally urged him to reconcile with his family. A warrior's greatest victory, she said, is not over beasts or enemies, but over the pride within his own heart. Nima's eyes glowed with ancient wisdom. She pressed a small carved amulet into Kito's hand, shaped like two interlocking circles. May this guide your steps toward unity. Her words reverberated in Kito's mind, swelling with the memories of his younger brother's heart expressions. No longer able to ignore the call of home, he gathered his belongings and set forth, his heart torn between the triumph he had achieved and the uncertainty he would face when confronting Jabari. A hush settled over the warriors' camp as Kito departed, the long road ahead a path of both redemption and potential heartbreak. When Kito finally arrived at the village, it was past dusk. He could barely recognize the place in the faint moonlight. The once lush fields were bare, the huts showing signs of disrepair. A stale hush had settled over the settlement, broken only by the distant bark of a scrawny dog. Kito's chest tightened. He made his way to his family's compound, where the flicker of a lone lantern cast shadows on the mud walls. Entering quietly, he found Momba slumped by a small fire, anxiety etched across his face. Maisha lay curled on a woven mat, drained from a day's struggle. When they looked up and recognized Kito, relief mingled with tears. Yet, amid their tearful reunion, Kito felt the familiar sting of tension as he glanced around in search of Jabari. It was then he heard faint footsteps. Jabari appeared, arms crossed and expression guarded, the lantern's glow revealing both surprise and lingering hurt. A question lingered unspoken: would this homecoming heal or would it rip open the unhealed wounds between them? The reunion was fragile at first. Momba and Maisha embraced Kito, ignoring their own exhaustion to prepare a small meal. Jabari stood to the side, biting his lip as if every emotion within him clashed like swords in a duel. Kito tried to bridge the distance by inquiring about Jabari's life, but the younger brother answered in monosyllables. Momba, perceiving the tension, changed the subject to the dire state of the village. That night, the family discussed how the drought had ravaged their community. Elderly neighbors fell ill due to lack of water, children grew frail, and fear hung in the air like a looming storm. Kito offered to share the survival techniques he'd learned, but the mention of his training as a leopard warrior only rekindled Jabari's bitterness. In the flickering light of the fire, Kito caught a glimpse of tears in Jabari's eyes before his younger brother abruptly retreated outside. The hush that followed was thick with regrets and uncertainty, a silence that promised both conflict and the faint glimmer of resolution. Come dawn, the family rose early. Villagers had gathered near the empty well, huddled in desperation. Kito stepped forward, determined to help. Using knowledge from his training, he advised digging new water channels near an ancient underground spring. He explained that the land sometimes guarded hidden reserves, if only one knew where to look. Momba believed in his son and rallied men from the village to begin the excavation. Meanwhile, Jabari quietly organized a group to search for medicinal roots and purify any standing water they might find. Though neither brother would acknowledge it aloud, they were both working toward the same goal, saving their home. Yet, their parallel efforts felt like separate missions rather than a collaborative quest. From a distance, Maisha watched, her heart heavy with longing for a day when her two sons would stand side by side, forging a bond stronger than any drought. The tension hung in the air like a drawn bowstring, ready to snap at the slightest provocation.